The desert winds howled through the ancient sands of Niger, where Dr. Lena Voss uncovered something not mentioned in any textbook. A massive claw, still sharp despite the centuries, poked from the eroded cliff. The excavation team froze. It wasn't just a fossil. It was a signal. The creature's name had been buried in forgotten maps and tribal whispers. A Frovinator. As night fell, the sand shifted unnaturally. Lena realized they hadn't just found bones. They disturbed something older than myth and more dangerous than extinction. Her flashlight flickered, and behind her in the dark, something growled low and hungry. Round pushpin introduction. Dr. Lena Voss had always chased questions no one else dared to ask. Paleontologist by training and explorer by instinct, she didn't belong in classrooms or behind glass museum walls. Her home was the wild, and her language was bone. Now she stood in the heart of the Tenere Desert. This place was ancient and brutal. Winds carved the dunes into shifting towers. The sun punished every living thing without mercy. But somewhere beneath the sands lay the truth she had hunted for years. Her team had set up camp near a ridge known only in tribal legends. Locals refused to come close. They whispered of creatures that walked like shadows after sunset. Lena dismissed the warnings. Stories always bloomed around fossil beds. Bones turned into monsters when passed down through generations. She was here for science. The truth buried under time. With her boots deep in the sand and a satellite map in hand, Lena stepped toward the excavation site. Behind her, 4 researchers followed. Most were younger, hungry for discovery. One of them, James Kincaid, had worked with Lena for 6 years. He was quiet and precise, never wasted a word. Lena dropped to one knee near a marked area and brushed away the top layer of sand. There was something different about this location. Rock formations twisted upward like broken fingers. The air had a stillness that didn't feel natural. She didn't believe in curses or ancient gods, but she believed in instincts. And something in her gut said this place remembered what had once walked here. The ridge in front of her was called Terratagle by the nomads. The name meant teeth of the sand. Lena had laughed when she heard it, but now, standing before its jagged face, the name didn't feel so funny. She looked over the ridge. Fossil-rich layers glinted in the light like hidden treasure. Lena smiled. If the bones were there, she would find them. That's what she did. She uncovered the forgotten. And this time, what waited for her would not stay buried. Lena stumbled back from the tunnel, breath caught in her throat. The glowing eyes blinked once, then vanished. She stood frozen for a long moment, then turned and walked back to camp, fast but not running. She didn't tell the others. Not yet. By morning, the cave's presence could not be ignored. The opening had widened. More of the ridge had crumbled in the night. Something was emerging, slowly, patiently. James noticed the tracks first. Large impressions in the sand, too deep and wide for any known animal. No claws, just padded feet, like a predator. Lena leaned over one print, jaw tightening. Could it be erosion? One of the students asked. Only if erosion hunts in circles, James muttered. Equipment began failing. Radios lost signal. Cameras refused to power on. At first it was brushed off as heat damage, until someone checked a battery. Fully charged, but dead. Lena ordered an internal scan of the fossil site. They used ground-penetrating radar meant for locating ancient burial layers. What showed up on the screen stunned them. Beneath the ridge lay a network of chambers. Not caves, built tunnels. Geometric in shape, artificial, or so it seemed, and scattered within them, massive organic shapes. Too many to count. Not just one creature. Dozens. Lena's hands trembled. The tribe that named this place Teeth of the Sand may not have been speaking metaphorically. She returned to the mouth of the cave just before dusk. A strange sound drifted out, like breathing. Heavy, slow, but there was no wind, no explanation. That night, one of the students disappeared. Amira, the youngest on the team, had gone to collect a dropped lens case before lights out. She never came back. Lena searched the camp herself. No signs of a struggle. No footprints leading away. Just gone. Panic spread. Arguments broke out. James tried to keep order. Lena stayed quiet, because she had seen something again. Just beyond the tents, near the ridge, those eyes, watching. The next morning, Lena found a scrap of Amira's jacket half buried in the sand near the cave. A single slash ran through the fabric. Clean, deep. She didn't share that with the group either. Instead, she called for more digging. If there was something buried in the tunnels, she needed to know what it was, what species, what history, what threat. They exposed more fossil remains over the next 2 days. Teeth longer than a man's forearm, a jaw that could unhinge, and spine ridges not seen in any known theropod. It matched nothing in the records, yet Lena already knew its name. Whispers of it had lived in tribal stories. A creature that hunted across what had once been a green paradise in the age of giants. A beast that walked faster than it ran. That killed not for food, but for silence. A frovinator, not just a dinosaur. A predator engineered by nature to endure extinction. And now, perhaps no longer extinct, one night, the wind returned. Hard, hot, it screamed through the camp. Tents tore loose. Sand lashed like glass. Lena ran for cover. Through the storm, she saw something enormous move along the ridge. It didn't run. It walked. The shape of it was wrong. The storm ended at dawn. The camp lay in ruins. Tents shredded. Tools scattered. The satellite equipment destroyed. Only 5 team members remained. James was bleeding from a gash on his forehead. 2 more had vanished in the night. Lena stood at the edge of the collapsed ridge, staring into the cave's dark throat. She no longer believed this was just a dig site. This was a tomb. Or worse, a door. She entered the cave. The others followed, reluctantly. James kept the rear, his hand gripping a steel hammer like a weapon. Flashlights flickered against the carved walls. Fossilized claw marks raked the stone. Deep, repeated, as if something inside had tried to escape. Farther in, the air grew thick, warm, breathing. Lena stopped suddenly. Before her lay a massive chamber. The walls were covered in strange black patterns, bone-colored ridges, layered in spirals. Not natural, not random. A shape moved in the shadows. It stepped forward. The creature stood upright, but its posture shifted like liquid. Muscles wrapped around bone too flexible to be normal. Its head was long, narrow, lined with jagged teeth. Eyes burned yellow. It didn't hiss. It didn't roar. It watched, and behind it, more eyes blinked open. There wasn't one a frovinator. There was a nest. The chamber wasn't a fossil bed. It was a hatchery. These weren't animals trapped in time. They were survivors. Preserved not by chance, but by design. The tunnels weren't made by water. They were dug out, maintained. And the creatures had waited, adapted. Lena whispered, "They're not extinct." The creature moved faster than thought. It lunged toward James. He swung the hammer, but missed. A single swipe sent him crashing into the wall. Screams echoed through the chamber. One of the students ran. Another followed. The beast gave chase with unnatural speed. Lena grabbed a flare and lit it. The red light seemed to stun them, if only for seconds. She saw their faces clearly now, not purely reptilian. Intelligent, aware, predators with memory. James stirred, blood dripping from his scalp. "Lena, we have to seal the cave." She nodded. She knew, if they escaped into the open world, nothing would stop them. She dragged a line of fuel from her pack across the tunnel entrance. The others returned, breathless and bruised. One missing again. They all knew what had to be done. She struck the flare and tossed it. Fire exploded through the tunnel. The heat roared. Stone cracked. The creatures howled from within. The ridge began to collapse. Lena grabbed James and ran. They barely cleared the outer chamber before the entire structure caved in. Sand thundered down. A final scream pierced the air, then silence. Smoke rose into the dawn. The cave was gone. The team stood outside, burned broken and fewer than before. Lena stared at the scorched ridge, not with relief, with fear, because in her mind she saw those eyes again. Not panicked, not angry, just waiting. The desert was still again. Smoke curled from the collapsed ridge. No movement, no sound, only the hollow emptiness left behind after something ancient dies or sleeps. Lena sat on the cracked sand beside James. His arm was in a makeshift sling. A long cut ran across his shoulder. He didn't speak much. None of them did. The silence was heavier than before. They had lost 3 people. No time to bury them. No time to grieve. The remaining team worked quietly to pack what little equipment had survived. Most of the data had been destroyed in the fire or the storm. Only fragments remained, scans, partial images, vague recordings. Lena kept the bone fragment in her pocket, a single fossil tooth the size of her hand. Proof of what they had found. Proof of what the world wasn't ready to face. By afternoon, their emergency beacon activated. A response came through. A rescue chopper was inbound. It would reach them in 24 hours. Until then, they waited. Lena stood alone at the edge of the collapse. She could still feel heat rising from the cracked rock. Part of her hoped they were gone. Another part knew better. Something that had survived extinction didn't die from fire and stone. James approached quietly. "Do you think we stopped them?" Lena didn't answer right away. "No," she said finally. "I think we delayed them." He looked at the rubble. "Then what now?" Lena turned toward the sun, which now dipped toward the horizon. Shadows grew again across the sand. "We tell no one," she said. James blinked. "What?" "If the world finds out," Lena continued, "they'll come. Scientists, governments, poachers, and they'll dig until they wake something worse. You want covered up?" "I want to protect what's left of the world." The others said nothing when she told them. They simply nodded, their eyes hollow, their spirits tired. That night, no one slept. The wind came and went, soft this time. But still, none of them dared close their eyes for long. The eyes behind the darkness had vanished, but their memory had not. The rescue chopper arrived at sunrise. Its blades chopped the silence into noise, dust rising around the broken camp. The team didn't wave or cheer. They stood still, pale and silent, survivors of something no one else could ever understand. Lena climbed aboard last. She glanced back one final time at the ridge. Nothing moved, but deep in her chest, the sense of being watched never faded. The chopper lifted. The desert shrank below. 2 weeks later, Lena sat before a panel of scientists in a quiet UN facility in Geneva. She presented partial data, fossil scans, climate notes, nothing more. No mention of the cave, no mention of the eyes. They call it tragedy. A sandstorm gone wrong. Lives lost during a dig. She nodded quietly and signed the report. James left science, disappeared into the southern coast, far from deserts and bones. Lena returned to her office. She hung the single fossil tooth on her wall. A reminder. Every night, she dreamed of the chamber, of the patterns on the walls, of the way the creatures didn't flinch from light or fire or noise. They only paused for one thing. She studied the markings again, traced from memory in her notebook. They weren't spiral carvings. They were symbols, a warning, or worse, a language. One night, a courier arrived with a box. No return address. Inside was a single item, a satellite image. Lena stared at it for a long time. It showed a location in northern Chad, a ridge, a collapse, and a tunnel. She closed the blinds, locked the door, because a Fravinator hadn't been alone, and the world was still full of sand. Wrong. Taller than it should be. Leaner. Adapted. Evolved. Lena stood alone in her lab, weeks after returning. The fossil tooth lay on her desk. It was heavier than she remembered. Clean, cold, unyielding. She had told the world what it could handle. A partial truth. The storm, the collapse, the missing. The report was filed, stamped, and forgotten. No one questioned her version. No one wanted to know more. But at night, she knew what was real. She had seen eyes that reasoned. Creatures that had watched her not with hunger, but recognition, as if they remembered the shape of humans, as if they had waited for them. She walked her wall and pulled down a map of Africa. Her fingers hovered over Niger, then drifted east, to Chad, to Sudan, to places untouched by satellite. She didn't sleep anymore, not because of fear, because of purpose. Then one morning, she opened her door and found a parcel with no label. Inside was a field journal. It wasn't hers. The notes were recent, handwritten. The last entry chilled her blood. Saw movement under the dunes. Tall, silent. One eye reflected light. It watched the camp. Markings matched Lena's diagrams. Leaving now. Below that, a smeared fingerprint in dried blood. And a tooth, not fossilized. White, sharp, fresh. She stared at it for a long time, then looked out the window. Far beyond the horizon, where sand still shifted. The fire hadn't killed them. It had woken them. And now they were spreading. Let me know if you like a brief epilogue.